Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55.
Hi, everybody. Today we're going to go on a little more serious road. The Surgeon General came out with a study this year that said that over half of all Americans are lonely. And our guest today is an expert in suicide prevention, education, and we're going to have a really difficult but important conversation about suicide prevention. So I'd like to welcome my guest, Deb Casello, who is the founder and CEO of Keys 365. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you so much for having me here. And I just want to start off by saying that I hope today, although the material or the information we're going to talk about is serious and important, that people will leave this podcast feeling very uplifted, and the fact that there is a way for them to get involved and build hope within their community.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's more prevalent today, or is it that when we were growing up, we didn't have access to social media and news, or is it just more of a problem in 2023?
I think there's a lot of different factors that go into what is happening in our culture, because things were not talked about as much and spread around the way they were, the way they are now. But I think the main thing is that people have not changed in the sense of needing human connection, needing that ability to have meaningful contact and relationships with others. And for me, getting into this whole world, people will often say, like, how did you even get started in this? And for me, I saw that there was this need, that people were feeling lonely and socially disconnected and isolated. But I saw it in all these different places and across different populations, because I was with my ex-husband for 26 years, and he had a 24-year career in the Air Force as a combat rescue officer. And so our family experienced, we have 2 kids, and our family experienced 8 deployments at 7 different bases. And I saw that whether we were stationed in, Georgia or Las Vegas, Nevada, or Hawaii or Alaska, that people are just people. And as these military members were going off for months at a time, coming back to us, that we didn't know how to support each other in ways that were impactful. We became more isolated. Communities wanted to support. They didn't know what to do. The spouses, we were also struggling. And for our military members, the results of the post-traumatic stress were taking a toll, deployment after deployment. And when we ended up in Alaska, I was doing some on-scene crisis and trauma support for the police and fire departments, where that was a different type of work. But through that, I was asked, hey, do you want to become a trainer for suicide prevention? And I love to learn anything new. So I said, yes, I would love to do that. So I took the training, and just heartbreakingly, right after that, our kids were in high school. There was a student at their school that died by suicide, and it was very public and really traumatic. And we ended up, having all these kids at our house, and they're saying, what do we do? How do we help each other? And I loved that was their response. And I said, well, I can teach this class. And we ended up that we had almost 50 kids show up for this class, wanting to learn how to help each other. And we realized there was a need. So we, long story short, I ended up being hired by the Department of Education through the University of Alaska. And I traveled all over and taught suicide prevention classes, and in like little bush villages, and then in some of the the larger cities of Alaska. And it was a wonderful experience to help people realize there was something that they can do, but that they didn't have to take it all on and try to fix it themselves. And then I came back to Northern Virginia and started Keys 365. And basically, our whole mission is really to combat just exactly what you said. The Surgeon General is saying we have an epidemic of loneliness and social isolation. So we want to, through Keys 365, offer free 60 to 90-minute classes. They are packaged in a way that everything is best practice. So it's what the leading mental health organizations are saying, this is how we can help each other. And this is your scope of capability. And we've put it into a class that's accessible. So we can go into any business, any school. We're certified as or approved as continuing legal education for attorneys. And people can understand these basic introductory skills around supporting each other and get inspired to change it within their community, make it acceptable to talk about this stuff, and then get inspired to learn more about it.
Right. So when you do these classes, like let's give our listeners and our viewers, some things that we can look out for. What do we're actually going to a funeral on Saturday for a friend of our son who's 23 years old who died by suicide last week. And it's heartbreaking. My daughter went to school with him. My son played hockey with him. His mom worked with my husband for years and years. And I think of this adorable kid, and she's posting all these pictures and he's smiling, like this beautiful smile in every picture. And there's tons and tons of pictures. So you're looking at this and you're like, they probably knew a lot more than we did, the outsiders. But, what are signs that we should look for with kids, our kids' friends? I know, like you just said, I always had all the kids at my house in high school and, which I loved, but, those kids who didn't want to be at home, are there signs? Let's just kind of go through that.
Absolutely. So we should start off as well by saying that anybody listening to your podcast, if anybody has questions, if anybody feels themselves like they're either activated or engaged by the topic that we're talking about, or if they're listening with someone who appears to maybe want some more information or support, that dialing 988 is a wonderful, fast, immediate way to get support. And I just want to give a little shout out to that so that as we're talking, you don't just have to call for yourself. You can call if you want to get support for somebody else or get information or have questions or just want to talk about it. And so I just want to, right out of the gate, get a great resource out there, which is 988. So for the risk factors and warning signs, there are many. And there is a lot of research done around this. And the research shows that in the week or two before an attempt is made, there is most of the time some sort of sign or heads up that something is coming. However, I always want to be really careful to acknowledge that based on a relationship to a person, based on their own experience, based on what is happening in our lives right now, we may not see it or there may not be any. And so nobody should have any sort of guilt feelings or shame around the fact that this took place and somehow they didn't know, because we are all very busy and we're showing up trying to do the best we can. And sometimes it does happen. However, there are risk factors and warning signs. And what we try to do is we cover sort of a broad scope of what those could look like. And then, for example, we've partnered with Morgan's Message to work with university student athletes. So those student athletes are going to see some more specific things, like just if we want to pick that population or even students, kids who, and you're really looking for changes where if somebody was very engaged in activities, whatever their social activities were, if they were known to be a certain grade level as far as where their work comes in, because we're looking for changes in someone. Somebody who stops, which can be tough with kids, but people who like stop taking care of themselves, stop showering. And anybody who's had teenagers knows that.
Right. that probably isn't the one you should really look at.
But it's a big picture, right? So you're looking at, and this is one of the things we go over is like student athletes, have they had an injury which is preventing them from engaging in the thing that they love to do? Are they not coming to practices? Are they not being as collaborative with others when you're in a team setting? So these are all listed like this. There's lists and lists and lists of these. What we do and why what we're doing is important is that the classes we teach, they're interactive. So it's not me standing up there talking and you listening. It's we teach something, you do an activity. Teach something, do an activity. So with the risk factors and warning signs, like we actually do an exercise where you're working with a partner. And what you're really looking for are different ways that someone's behavior might be changing, situations that they don't have within their control. And then, so there's like the life circumstances and then things that they're saying. And what I really want for people to understand is that suicide prevention is not hard. What is hard is it's not complicated, meaning the words that you use, the actions you take, they're not hard to comprehend and understand. What is difficult is suicide is so complex. There's so many different factors at play. We most of the time don't know somebody else's story. And so the difficult part is just showing up and leaning in when someone is really struggling and understanding that you might not be able to fix anything, but you can be there for that person in that time and just say, I really don't know what to do, but I know that there are people that can help and support. I'm with you in this and I'm going to stick with you and we're going to get you to the right person. And it might not be the first person, right? You have to have persistence and you get to be that strength for that person. Like, oh gosh, that didn't work out. And, I myself have had, I could tell you, like I call every hotline number. I try every, anything that I ever say, like, oh, you could try this. I've done it. I've tried it to see what happens. And, I said, okay, so all my healthcare is through the military. And I said, if I'm going to encourage people to use the Telemind is, I think, the telehealth thing, I should go on there and see how that feels. Went on and I spent hours filling out all this stuff, this paperwork. And I thought people struggling with post-traumatic stress very often have difficult with some of these processing things. And it just is, and I said, I'm an older lady. I would like somebody with a couple gray hairs on their head. You know what I mean? I was like, right. I want to be able to engage. And they sent me back this 32-year-old man. And I was like, oh, I'm going to end up giving this guy advice. Like,
Right. What could he possibly know about where I'm at?
Right. I'm sure he had information to give, but I just thought, so I said, okay. So I went back and I said, could I have somebody else? But I try to tell people I am not in crisis, not in a situation where I was in dire need of support. And I thought it was a little discouraging. And it's a learning curve all the time because telehealth is new and everybody's trying to figure out how it works. But what we can do for the people who are struggling is understand that we do not have to fix it. We just have to support and care about them and encourage them to keep getting the support that they need, looking for the right support.
Do you find that when people are in crisis like that, are they open for it? Do they really want help, or are most of them kind of shut down? And I feel like that's a place where I would struggle because I'm a fixer and I always want to fix things. And, and I just feel like if somebody's in that kind of a place, they might not want to be fixed.
So what I would say is we're not fixing anybody. What we're really doing is more the companioning. But there are sort of two and I'm really making this broad here, areas of suicide prevention. And there is one, which is the crisis intervention, and that I have done before. And it is a very complex, lot of training needing. You are not going to take an hour and a half class and know how to do that safely. So where we feel is though that area of crisis is actually a smaller window. Where there's a very long road in many cases, not all the time, but there are things that happen that lead somebody to get to that crisis point. And Keys 365 is focused on that road where we want to get in there early and support around the things that, if left unattended and unsupported, could lead to thoughts of suicide. And so what we're doing, KEYS is an acronym, meaning knowledge and empathy yield strength. And the 365 is for use these tools every day. So what we want to do is come in and say there, and we deliver it in a community setting, because so much of our world is in this siloed environment where there are so many wonderful programs and videos and books and things that you can get. But when you receive information in a siloed environment, it makes it difficult to translate that into community action. And so what we do is, and I say, like, if what we're doing does not resonate with you or your community, please find a program that does, because there's so much need. There's no competition for, how
for saving lives, right?
Like, let's just all get in there together. And so for us, what we do is we want people to receive the information in that community that they're living, working, spending free time. It's why, people going to church get together. There's, community, meetings. There's power in that. And so what we do is we focus on integrating empathy into the suicide prevention framework. And what that looks like is, like, you and I and all your listeners, we've all had really different life experiences. And sometimes one of the barriers to supporting someone, like you were saying, like, do they want that support? Do they want that help? And one of the barriers is we view ourselves as very different from someone else. So how do I connect with somebody in a completely different life circumstance? And what we do with our risk factors and warning signs is talk about, how might you be feeling if these things were going on in your life? And in that way, I know that because we're both human, you have also experienced loneliness and heartbreak and shame and disappointment. And around those things, instead of pointing at, like, oh, I see that you're doing this, or I see that this is happening to you, I'm saying, if this were happening to me, I know that I would want somebody to care about me in this time. And so I see that this is happening in your life, and I want you to know I'm here for you.
They just had a story on game day last Saturday. I think it was last Saturday, but one of the college coaches lost his son to suicide. And in his healing, every time he's in the locker room with his team, he talks about it. He was very open about it. Well, it turns out that there were several members of that team who had contemplated suicide and went to the coach, because they then felt connected to him, because he had just gone through this with his son and obviously devastated. Mm-hmm. But he probably saved 3 or 4 young men's lives by saying, this is what happened to me. And you're right, when people feel inclusive. Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a recording of it. You should watch it. But it was really moving and powerful. And I love what you're doing for that exact reason, that when you put people in a group and let them know they're not alone, what they're feeling, other people have felt, or, in that room could be feeling, that's how you make a difference.
Exactly. And I think understanding that there are some very simple things that we can do, like our word choice and the phrases that we're using that can help build connection. And then, and I always tell people, we are all just trying, right? So when we go over these phrases, that get commonly used. Some of them actually create distance with other people, and then some help draw people together. And I always say, look, I probably even said one of these today, so we're all doing our best. But we go over the verbiage, the recommended verbiage around suicide prevention. We talk about risk factors and warning signs. And then we also talk about openly and safely asking directly about suicide. And again, because we're focused on early intervention, we in the dialogue that we have put together, that is all right on websites. There's several different dialogues out there, and we've assembled a very generic one, because over the years of teaching, what I got back was, there's a lot of role play that goes on in practicing these things, and that's really important. But people were saying, could I just get an example? And in response to that, wonderful organizations, SAMHSA, the Mayo Clinic, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, like they all put up sample dialogues. So what we do in our classes, we assembled one where our person is thinking about suicide, but has not taken any action, made a plan, or moved forward. So it's exactly the place that we're trying to engage people, where I've had thoughts of this, but I know I need help. And this is how, and so we go through and we give you the words, like, this is a practice dialogue. You find your voice, because your tone is what's really going to matter. And even if you completely mess it up, it's okay, because you let someone know that you care enough to ask.
And one of the things you said is, actually asking them, are you thinking about this? You brought up Morgan's Message. Donna Rogers, who's the founder of that, is an old dear friend, and she lost her daughter to suicide. And that was the one thing she said. She said, we talked about everything. Their family was so open. We talked about drugs and sex and everything. She said, but we never asked her, are you thinking of taking your life? So, and to me, that one was just so astounding to me, because I can't imagine saying that to someone, but it really is something really important that you should consider asking a person.
And that is another one of the very common myths and facts that we go over, is that talking openly about suicide, asking directly, does not encourage or foster any attempts or behavior. Asking openly is really important. And we cover a lot of this too, that, I say you have to be clear and direct. And I said, if I say, are you thinking about hurting yourself? That is a very direct question, but it's not clear that I'm talking about suicide. So you have to actually say, are you thinking about killing yourself? And you can even say to the person, I'm going to ask you this because I really want to know, I care about you. Are you thinking about suicide? And it's a really beautiful thing. We taught for Morgan's Message athletes up at Johns Hopkins and then at Randolph-Macon. And I had, at the last minute, somebody couldn't make it. And I called my son and I said, would you mind getting up? It's a weekend, very early, driving to Randolph-Macon and volunteering. And he said, okay, no problem. And like superhero son. Anyway, when I was in the class, I was talking about that, ability for people to conceal the signs that they may be thinking about it. And I said, just like not even really thinking too much about it, I just said, this is the world in which I live. If I was thinking about suicide, nobody would ever know it if I didn't want them to. And I was driving home. We had driven separately. And my son called me and he said, Mama, I just love the class. I learn something new every time I take it. And he goes, but he said, there's something that you said and I want to follow up. And I said, okay. And he goes, you said if you were thinking about suicide, that no one would know. And he said, I know that you are super tired. You've been working really hard. And I know, there's all the stuff going on in my life. And he said, are you thinking about suicide? And I was like, oh. And I thought, like, how much courage does that take?
For a son, his mom, right?
And, it was interesting because no one's ever asked me that before. And I just felt this wash of love come over me. Like, wow, my son actually cared enough to ask me that. And I was so grateful, like what a courageous person.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So I have a question. I was doing some research before and saw that, and this another astounding fact, almost 70% of people who die by suicide are white males.
Oh.
What's going on?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors. Again, it's, I am more on the prevention, and what I can say is what research that has come out about that I am aware of, and I'm sure there's a lot of different factors. But one of the things, the differences between men and women are that men, I hate to say like this generally, but generally men use more lethal means in the attempts. And so there are actually more attempts usually by women, but there's more time to get help in there. So I would, for me, that is not my area of, like reviewing the statistics and data as far as like why these things are happening. I am much more focused on how do we build meaningful connections, no matter who you are, no matter what your demographic outlook is. What we really want to do is focus on ways that we can find commonality to support each other and become invested in the comfort of saying, either being able to step forth and say, I'm struggling and I know this community that I'm in supports getting help, or the comfort of saying, I'm concerned about someone else, I'm going to ask. And this is going to be, part of our community standard that we now live in.
So, Deb, what do you do if you ask that question? Are you thinking of dying by suicide? And somebody says yes. Like, what do you do right then and there?
Right. So what we really, the first step is really to find out, first of all, I always validate and reassure them and say, like, I'm so glad that you trusted me with how you're feeling. And just a validating point of, this was a positive that you shared this with me. And then it's really most important to find out where they are in that. Is this a crisis? Because some people, if they are thinking about suicide, they are thinking about things. There's a whole range of where they're at. Have they taken any steps to move that forward? Is there a plan? Where are you? You're trying to get a feel for where you are in that. And then depending
do you ask them that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'll say, well, have you made a plan? Have you taken any steps to, put that plan into action? Or, generally you can ask them directly, but usually once people have been able to share and it's a safe reception, then, even just saying, can you tell me more about what's going on? And tell me more. Those are my favorite. That's my favorite thing to say to people. I'm just like, please tell me more. I'm here. I'm listening, and I want to be supportive. So it's less like when you're saying, like, what do you say? It's more about listening at that point and understanding where they're at. And then, I am not a clinician. I'm a trainer, teacher, coach, support and cheerleader. But I am not going to try and treat this person in those moments. What my job to do is validate that they have given this information to somebody safe, and then get them to the right help. And depending on what is happening in that situation, that's what is going to determine kind of what you do next. I think one of the things that is really a challenge is that people view sometimes suicide prevention as, like I say, like 0 or 100. And it doesn't mean that you either do nothing or go to the hospital and check yourself into an inpatient clinic. There's a whole range of support in there. So barriers to support can be fear of losing a security clearance. It can be concerns about what other people will think of them. It will, there's all this whole range of reasons people don't get support. So what we want to do is just take a first step. And a really easy thing that everybody can do again, we started with this in the beginning, is if someone shares it with you and you don't know what to do, you can say, I'm here, not really sure what to do to help, but you know what? Let's call 988 together. We'll just put it on speakerphone and let's just see what they have to say. And you just start the ball rolling. But also with the understanding, and this is a really key thing, that the person sharing with you may not share with you what is really going on, what is the full story. And I will just tell you that and I heard your little buzzer. So if you gotta, if we can go, you just let me know. But we had a situation where, I was teaching a class. We actually went through the process of having the class approved as 1 or 2 hour continuing legal education in the state of Virginia. So attorneys can take this class and get their credits for it. We're sitting in class, and in the middle of the class, someone took out a phone and started texting. And the little teacher in the back of my head was like, oh, right. And I just thought, I don't know her story. I'm going to just let this just keep going. And at the end of the class, she came up and she was all weepy. And she said, while I was taking the class, I realized that I was really worried about my brother. And so during the class, I just sent him a text. And all I said was, I love you. I'm on your side. I want you to know that I'm always here for you. And I was like, I thought to myself, we don't know someone's story, and we don't need to. All we need to know is that as caring human beings, just trying to show up and make a difference in the world and, connect with others, that we don't have to have all the information. We just have to be able to get them to appropriate support.
That's great. So if people want to find you, if people want to have you come in and do these trainings, how do they reach you?
Absolutely. So keys365.org. So it's KEYS365.org is our website. There's a 3-minute video on our About page that tells all about what we do. Everything is free. It's packaged in 60 to 90 minutes. It is customized for the groups attending. And we will work with you on whatever special needs you might have, but we come to your location to make it as easy as possible.
That's great. And we end every episode with the same 2 questions. You are in your 50s, like I am, and doing this amazing work. Yep. Sounds like many of the women that I interview, we're not going anywhere in the next many, many years. But what is the greatest thing you've accomplished since you turned 50?
So I have to split it into a personal and a professional, because both my kids, my daughter is 26 and a social worker and working on actually Pearl Harbor, helping military families. And my son just graduated from Mason with a degree in cybersecurity engineering and has a paying benefited job. So,
you've done your job, Mom. Check.
Parenting mission accomplished for today. We'll see. But that's on the personal side. But for sure, realizing that even if our life after 50 goes in a way we never saw it going, that it's still possible to have a life filled with purpose and meaning and make a difference. And Keys 365, like that for sure is my accomplishment.
Amazing. Congratulations on that. Well, and then where do you see yourself in 10 years?
What I would love is if we were able to grow this into an organization that I could be supporting in a less like, the travel. I don't know that I'll be up for the physical support of it, but be able to help other people continue this work, because there is no point at which we need to stop being there for each other and helping and loving each other.
Right. Awesome. Your organization is amazing. Everybody check out keys365.org. And if you want to bring Deb into your organization, it sounds like an amazing program. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.